Welcome to the American Dream Team podcast.
Hello and welcome to the American Dream Team podcast with experienced immigration attorney Ahmad Yakzan. Ahmad left Lebanon at age 18, dreaming of one day becoming an attorney. He faced many challenges but worked hard to achieve his goals and now has four degrees and U.S. citizenship. His passion is helping immigrants with all of their concerns, from green card application to deportation. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're going to discuss immigration consequences of criminal charges. Ahmad, great to see you.
Good to see you too. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween to you. Can you explain the relationship between criminal charges and immigration status for our listeners?
So there are a lot of ways that criminal charges can impact someone's ability to come to the United States or stay in the United States. There is a marriage between criminal issues and inadmissibility and deportability. Let me explain those ideas before I tell you how it affects someone's immigration status. Inadmissibility means that you cannot come to the United States, and deportability means, or removability means, that you're getting kicked out of the United States. So there are almost similar, identical grounds for inadmissibility and deportability, but criminal charges, when it comes to criminal charges and immigration consequences, they can stop you from coming into the United States, and they can affect your ability to remain in the United States if you're in the United States already. Okay. So depending on what the ground of inadmissibility or the deportability is, criminal charges can affect you in one of those two ways. I have had clients before apply for them to come here to the United States, or they came here to the United States, but they did not disclose a marijuana charge, for example, when they were in a different country, and they came in and they were placed in removal proceedings because of it. And I've had clients that actually get convicted of things, and I have clients that get convicted in the United States that the government is seeking to remove from the United States because of that criminal charge. So it affects you in multiple ways: ability to come into the United States and your ability to stay here in the United States if you're already here.
Okay. And are there certain types of criminal charges that are more likely to impact an individual's immigration status?
Yeah, so like everything in life, there are degrees to everything. The first degree that you have is what's called a petty offense, and that's something that you are allowed to stay. If you're convicted of something that leaves you that actually with the probable consequences of 6 months or less in jail, that's actually a petty offense. That would have limited consequences on your ability to visit or stay in the United States. Then the second level that we have is called crime involving moral turpitude. And these are not really defined in the Immigration and Naturalization Act, but they are defined by case law from the Board of Immigration Appeals and federal courts. These are things that affect and go against social norms. So, for example, anything that has fraud in it might be an issue. If you steal something, that might be a crime involving moral turpitude. If you scam someone, that might be a crime involving moral turpitude. And believe it or not, eluding arrest or hitting a cop, resisting arrest with violence is a crime involving moral turpitude. So if you get one or two of those, you will be inadmissible, and then the two of them will put you in deportability. You have to be removed from the United States. And the third and highest level is called an aggravated felony. And those are enumerated things that the Congress put into the Immigration and Naturalization Act, that if you're convicted of one of these 12 things, you will be deported from the United States, or you're not going to be able to come into the United States. And the aggravated felony is pretty much a kiss of death for anything that you're trying to apply for in the United States to stay here in the U.S. or come into the United States.
Yeah, that makes sense. How does a conviction affect a person's ability to obtain or renew a visa?
For visa renewals, it's going to affect you a lot, actually. In the previous administration, anything criminal, even something like a traffic citation, actually stopped you from renewing a visa or coming into the United States. Now they're being a little more lenient with people, especially if you have a citation or something when you previously came to the United States and were issued a visa. That would be okay. Now they're actually a little more lenient. But if you're convicted of something, and as I said, that's more serious, and you're here in the United States and you're trying to renew your visa by extension in front of USCIS, some of the crimes that I spoke about earlier actually affect your ability to renew your visa here in the United States too. So, for example, if you are on an H-1B visa, and I represented someone who had an H-1B visa, and they resisted arrest by federal agents that came to arrest the person, that became the aggravated felony that was actually used to deport him from the United States. And he was, in the same time, he was trying to renew his visa here in the United States. And because of that criminal conviction, the government did not extend his visa in the United States. So if you have anything criminal, I think you should speak to an immigration attorney before you submit any sort of renewal application or anything like that. You want to speak to an experienced immigration attorney to see if you're going to have a good chance of getting your visa approved or renewed if you already have a visa.
And do criminal charges affect undocumented immigrants differently than those with legal status?
So if you're here in the United States already, you have a bigger bundle of rights that allow you to have more protections and removal proceedings and in criminal proceedings. And the law doesn't apply to you when you're outside the United States. So, for example, the right to due process is not covered if you're applying for a visa outside the United States. But if you're here in the United States, that is a different, it's a different protection that you get. So both undocumented immigrants and legal immigrants can actually apply for protection under the law. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, if you're undocumented or under a green card or under a visa, and you get criminally arrested in the United States, anywhere in the United States, there is a case called Padilla v. Kentucky that was issued by the Supreme Court in 2014 that says that your criminal attorney needs to speak to an immigration attorney if they do not know what the consequences of your plea will be. You have to speak to an immigration attorney to sue. You have to speak to an immigration attorney to see if that charge and the plea will affect your immigration status in the United States. So, for example, if you're undocumented and you came into the United States without inspection, that would trigger inadmissibility in your case. And that would mean even if you're here in the United States, you're still considered an applicant for admission as an undocumented immigrant. And if you get arrested, the attorney, the public defender, or the private attorney that you hire to defend you in that criminal case needs to either know about immigration law or speak to your immigration attorney to see how it would affect you. And the criminal attorney is not supposed to tell you to take a plea if something is 100% going to lead you to your removal from the United States.
Okay.
So there are a lot of protections.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that next. What sort of legal protections exist for immigrants who are facing criminal charges aside from what you just said? What other protections do they have?
Okay, so as I said, if you're here in the United States, you do have the right to due process. So if you end up in front of any immigration agency, whether it's USCIS or the EOIR, where you end up in removal proceedings, you have the protection of the Constitution because you have stepped foot in the United States already. So you have to have constitutional protection. So we don't have the right to counsel, for example, a removal proceedings, but you do have the right to counsel in front of USCIS. So you're allowed to actually hire an attorney to go with you to your hearing. It's not like a criminal case where the United States government actually gives you an attorney. There is a big movement for that, but that hasn't passed yet. But if you are here in the United States and you're in removal proceedings, for example, you can bring an attorney with you to defend you against removal. And you do have a bundle of rights, like what I said, the right to due process under the Fifth Amendment. For example, the judge cannot take over the case and prosecute it against you and let the ICE prosecutor sit and relax and not say anything to prove his case. You do have limited rights under the Fourth Amendment. So if someone got some evidence against you in violation of the Fourth Amendment, then you can actually sue under that. There is also administrative rights, like the right to record your proceedings and all of that stuff that came from laws and regulations that the United States has put together. So as I said, if you are here in the United States physically, even if you're undocumented, you still get that bigger legal protection if you're here in the United States.
Okay, and can you talk a little? You touched on this a little bit, but can you talk about the importance of having an immigration attorney if you're facing criminal charges?
As I said, I mean, it used to be before 2014, before Padilla v. Kentucky, it used to be something that as ancillary, and it wasn't a violation of a due process to actually not have an immigration attorney or not speak to an immigration attorney if you are facing criminal charges. But now it's mandatory for your criminal attorney to actually speak to an immigration attorney or ask you to speak to an immigration attorney before you take a plea. Mm-hmm. For example, if your criminal attorney does not allow you to do that and takes a plea without you consulting with an immigration attorney, you will be able to set aside that plea and actually apply for motion to set aside the plea and reopen your criminal proceedings and see if you can get some relief in immigration proceedings after that. So that's number one. Number two, immigration lawyers know what they're doing. The majority of us. I've met a lot of very competent attorneys that will actually help you through your removal proceedings and will help you strategically plead to something that would not have an immigration effect on you. So what am I talking about? So if you are, for example, charged with a theft offense for more than $750 in the state of Florida, that's a felony, and you're supposed to. And in some instances, it actually ends up being an aggravated felony. So an immigration attorney can work with your criminal attorney to speak to the state attorney or the prosecutor and see if they can fashion it in a way where you can plead to a lesser offense that would not trigger deportability or inadmissibility if you're here in the United States or outside the United States. So you can work with an immigration attorney to fashion the plea in a way that it would not affect your chances of staying in the United States. A lot of people work very hard on their American dream to stay here in the U.S. And honestly, I see it a lot, and they skimp on hiring the immigration attorney to speak to them to see if they're facing criminal charges, and they end up paying the price down the road. Please, 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 if you're facing any sort of criminal charge, speak to an immigration attorney, pay for that consultation, hire them, and make sure that you get the best legal advice that you could.
Good. That's good. Good tips for sure. Do you have any case studies or personal stories that illustrate the impact of criminal charges on immigration status?
Yes, of course. I've been doing this for 15 years. I have a plethora of
many stories.
Where I've dealt with it. So one of the things that I absolutely love, I defended a person who was caught with some drugs. Let's just call them drugs. And it was a case down in Chrome, down in Miami. And the immigration court called him in. They arrested him and took him down there. ICE charged him with everything under the book, like an aggravated felony, a charge for resisting arrest, a charge for a CIMT, for a crime involving moral turpitude, everything under the sun. They literally threw the book at the guy. And I went in there and I looked at it, and I was able to dismiss all of them because literally they had charged him with something that he's already been in removal proceedings for. And I was able to go to the judge and file a motion to dismiss with the immigration judge, and it was granted. A lot of immigration attorneys go and, without looking at the record, go and admit the charges and admit to the factual predicates for the charges and say, okay, well, I'm going to file for cancellation of removal for you. I don't do that. I actually fight the charges themselves to make sure that you're getting the best defense that you can. Going into immigration court and just admitting to everything is like admitting to the death penalty in a criminal case. That would be a huge issue. So as I said, I have been doing it for 15 years, and I fight tooth and nail every single time I'm actually hired on a removal case, because that's what my clients deserve.
Finally, for the people who are listening to this, and if any of them maybe trying to navigate the criminal charges with immigration, what takeaways would you like them to get from this podcast, from this episode?
If you're not a U.S. citizen, and even if you are in some instances, please obey the law. It's really important to do that. And I tell a lot of people, I have a client right now who unfortunately is probably there's a high chance that they're going to be removed from the United States because they got a DUI and then they violated their probation, and now they're in removal proceeding. There is an issue with their entry into the United States. that might actually stop us from being able to defend them in removal proceedings. So if you are not a U.S. citizen, please, please, please try to obey the law as much as you can. But if you don't, and it happens, I promise it happens, call an immigration attorney to help you through what you're going through. If you're not a U.S. citizen, that will probably be the best money that you spend.
Good advice. Well, thank you for tuning in to the American Dream Team podcast with experienced immigration attorney Ahmad Yakzan. To connect with Ahmad, head to AmericanDreamLawOffice.com. And please like and subscribe our channel and leave a review if you enjoyed what you heard. Ahmad, thanks so much for being here and giving us all that knowledge. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.